Scott McDonald, welcome to A-League Access.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be on.
Thank you. Just wanted to start off by asking you about the FFA Cup game against Melbourne Victory Cup last week, I think it was. Great game. Gold Coast Knights had a great game, I thought. Just a shame the result didn't go your way, but a lot of positives to take away from the game. What were your thoughts at the end of the day?
Yeah, look, extremely proud of the players themselves and the sacrifices that they had to make over the course. Obviously, being out of season, having a delay to the game as well, with Melbourne not being able to come up just before Christmas. Everyone had to put their plans on the back burner throughout the Christmas period, which, as we know, is always a blow to anyone, particularly younger players who want to go and enjoy themselves. So they had to sort of stay disciplined throughout that period, which was great. And for me, basically getting told 3 weeks before the game that, right, you need to get a team together and you need to try and put a competitive team out there for the club. So it was a challenge in itself. The FA were very hospitable in terms of allowing us to have players that were cup tied, that previously they changed the rule into, if they hadn't played up to the round of 32, if they had been involved, then they couldn't. Thankfully, a lot of the players that we just signed were okay to play. So yeah, look, it was probably, we had about 7 new players within the squad itself. It was a complete turnover from last season. And we had 3 weeks to get everyone prepped, and the weather wasn't very kind to us either. So there was a lot of thunderstorms over that period. So there was a lot of cancellations within trying to get on the pitch as well. So it was just pure fitness sessions a lot of the time, and people getting to know each other.
Scott, it sounds that it wasn't just weather that was wreaking havoc, but COVID as well. Has that caused any problems to your training schedule? You guys, of course, are in your pre-season. It's a semi-professional setup. So, yeah, tell us about the COVID environment, please.
Yeah, so at the moment, we're just trying to adhere to the government's protocols. As we know, it's starting to get around. It's making our way around in the local communities, particularly now in Queensland. Since we've opened the borders, it's a new thing to us Queenslanders up here, because we've been so guarded from it for a long time. But it's well within the communities now, and yes, we have a couple of players at the moment with it. And look, we were just thankful that no one over the period for the FFA Cup were actually contracted it over that period or put anyone at risk. Now it's just an ongoing event that we have to deal with daily and week to week. And look, like you said, we are semi-professional, so the boys have got to look after their health for other matters, not just with the footballing stuff. It's more about their day-to-day stuff and trying to earn a living for themselves as well. But we're trying to make it and keep it as professional as possible. In my environment, I always like it to be that way. That's what I've been brought up with for the last 20 plus years. So the boys know that now, and they know the protocols that are in place. And as soon as they figure out that they have symptoms or do have a positive test, then they let us know, and we deal with it accordingly, myself and other people around the football club, which have been excellent.
So, Scott, you had an extensive career overseas in the UK, and we will talk about that a little bit later. I'm just interested, you came back to Australia, Western United, then Brisbane, Western Sydney Wanderers. So how did you end up then as a coach with the Gold Coast Knights? Was that through your son, or what was the journey there?
Yeah, look, for me, coming back, first and foremost, there was always a plan in place in my mindset to coach. You know, I wanted to come back and try and get the opportunity to gain experience, to progress, you know, in the next stage of my footballing career. You know, I hadn't done my UEFA B license, UEFA A license, to come home and not do that. Signing at Western United at the time, it took a lot longer for them to get up to speed than probably what was thought within the club itself, and myself as well, thinking that it would probably be a 12-month process where I was only going to play a year and then there'd be coaching availability. That didn't quite work out to be the case. And then at other places, you find sometimes you're looking at things and other people don't want you to go and do those things or achieve those things. So you have to go elsewhere and look at other ways and means of trying to progress in your own way instead of people stunting that. So that's been the case. In terms of my path or my journey into Gold Coast Knights, I think yes, my son has been playing there for the last 2 years, and I built a relationship with the football club, being around it quite a lot. And they were keen to have me involved in some capacity, even when I was still playing at Raw, because my son was there. Obviously, I was sort of declined it a little bit because I was still really busy and focusing on what was important, which was the playing side. But then obviously finishing at Brisbane and moving to Western Sydney, which was always going to be a short-term thing. It was just to sort of finish the game, playing wise on my terms, realistically, and enjoying and experiencing something different again, being a different club. I quite like that because people all work in different ways, coaches, staff, football clubs themselves. So it's great to have those experiences and sort of make relationships as well. But then the idea was always to come back to the Gold Coast, where we've settled for the last 2 years. My wife and kids are very happy here, and the opportunity came about. They asked the question, and I was delighted to accept, and get on the journey and the pathway. Something that really doesn't fear me. A lot of people probably go, oh, well, it's only semi-professional. You're not in the professional environment. You're going sort of, head deep into the unknown. For me, though, it was kind of like, well, I want to challenge myself. And, for me, I could have maybe chose a pathway into a youth system in the professional ranks. But my goal is to be a senior men's, head coach in the professional environment. So for me to actually have the opportunity to do that, even at semi-professional level, I'm going to learn a lot more in terms of the dealings of day to day and what I have to do in this environment than I would in a youth development.
Great segue to my next question, actually, Scott. I was going to ask you, do you aspire to coach in the A-League, or perhaps return to Scotland and follow in the footsteps of Ange?
Look, I think both. I think you have to crawl before you can walk, and then obviously walk and then run. Realistically, for me, it's yes, I have goals to progress. In my young coaching career at the moment, and you're always learning. So I'm just happy to be in the role that I'm in right now, and want to do the very, very best I possibly can for Gold Coast Knights. I think looking too far ahead can be can get you into trouble. And I think right now I look at it like I'm back as a YTS at Southampton again. That's the way I look at it, and I'm as hungry as ever to go and prove to people that I can make it, I can do it. But again, that's only through now, not individually. It's a collective unit now, and understanding that your players are the most important people to that, and you've got to give everything of yourself to them to be able to achieve what they want. And from that, everyone achieves stuff. It's not about me. And I think that's the first thing you learn as being a coach, is that you're responsible for 20 plus players. Somewhat even now, I'm taking more responsibility on because I love it, and I'm away to coach. Our seniors don't start the Thursday, but I've started already embedding in our under 23s what I want from them, and wanting to make them feel part of what our process is and how we're going to grow as a club. And then obviously I'm going to be in the juniors anyway. I was doing the junior program holiday camp this morning. And I just want our club to be as one and trying to have as big an influence as possible. And just have that family orientated feel to our club, where our young players want to come to the senior games, because now they know me. They've understood like what I am as a coach, and they're excited about being at our football club. I think that's important at a club like ours and community based, that you have those connections within the football club itself and grow it.
I was just going to say, is that important to you to see you develop the kids, the youth team, and hopefully they progress into the seniors? Is that what you're hoping to achieve as the coach at Gold Coast, to see the kids come up through the ranks so that they eventually do play senior football and maybe go on to the A-League or onto other professional clubs?
Well, particularly, look, I'm invested in that side because of my sons there anyhow. And I think that is a big plus. I think any coach that has a son involved that will always have one eye on it more so as well, and look upon it from a somewhat a selfish way because your son's there. But again, I don't really take anything to do with my son. I step away and let others coach. We've got a great, coaching team here as well at all age groups. But yeah, I think more than me, Santina, is it's the club wanting that. I think that's the important thing. You know, whether I'm here or not in a year or 2 years' time, that we're laying down foundations for the club to be able to do that and progress. I think that's important. I think that goes amiss a lot of the time with NPL. I think you're either one or the other. We have to get both right. I think we have to be successful at, you know, senior men's level and have the kids now to aspire to want to play for our first team. Because I look at pathways at the moment and I'm still very confused in terms of where they are within our country from when I grew up and what they were. And now the ownership's on all the A-League clubs to now build their academies accordingly. I'll be honest, I don't think they've done that yet. That's still debatable. And it's still trying to get to that level. And finance is a big part in that, where we used to have government funding previous to now, in my time growing up and developing, which certainly helped a lot. So there is difficulties within that. But within a club like ours, I'm hoping that obviously I can have a strong influence in terms of how we're going to develop that and how we can be better as a football club. Not just when I'm here, but hopefully then the next people who come along or whoever it is, it stays in place, that we're starting to build blocks and the club can progress.
Scott, in terms of your coaching ambitions, how important is, again, I don't want to make this interview about Ange Postecoglou, but how important and how influential is he now a figure for Australian coaches, considering he's gone to Scotland, an environment you know oh so well, having played in Old Firm derby, so you know the expectations and the pressures. So how important is his success for aspiring coaches, up-and-coming coaches such as yourself?
Well, look, I think it's important for the game here, and I think Australians looking at it, you know, it's taken Ange a long time to get to where it, you know, we see him now, but I think it's going to aspire or inspire a lot more younger, you know, generation coaches to keep pushing and keep believing that they can make it to the highest levels possible. You know, Ange is certainly opening doors, I think, for people, particularly Australians, you know, for bringing that success. It's a long, hard road still, guys. We know that realistically. For an Australian coach in those environments, in European football, you're an outsider. You know, you're not part of, you know, that European community, doing it in the European league. So it's very difficult. We've seen how difficult it was for Ange to finally break through to, you know, that European loophole. And he's doing excellent things. And it's not always about the ability of the individual. It's the perception of what the coach is and where he's come from. And I certainly think that that's changing now because of Ange, which is a great thing for Australian coaches, particularly. But in my mind, if you had have asked me 3, 4, 5 years ago, would I have came back to Australia and wanted to start the progression here? I might have probably said, I probably would have said no, to be perfectly honest. I always felt that staying in Scotland and progressing in the UK was always going to be the thing to be able to allow me to achieve, to get to other levels. And that might still be the case long term. You might have to go over there and do the hard yards and come through the ranks there, which again, I think I've already probably stated, I'm not really entirely scared of doing that. If anything, it helps you and you learn a lot from that.
Scott, coming to what we see in the background of yours, I mean, we already spoke about Celtic. You also have the Socceroos jersey there, but you played very successfully both in England and Scotland. You played with Celtic, with Motherwell, Southampton, Middlesbrough. But would you say Celtic is where your heart is? I would assume yes, because that's where the jersey comes from behind you, right?
Look, absolutely. I think a lot of our heart is still in Scotland as a family. The time I spent there, you talked about Motherwell as well. But I grew up a Celtic supporter. My mum and dad are from Glasgow. I still have family that are there, that are very close to us now because we spent so much time there. And look, you know, for me, growing up as a kid supporting, you know, Celtic, a young boy from Australia, a little bit probably like Ange's dream, you know, coaching in Europe. But, you know, this is a club I supported all my life. So to put on the jersey and actually wear the number 7 jersey, which is iconic at the football club as well, and be successful, I think that's what dreams are made of, isn't it? You know, that's stuff that you go to bed and you dream about and, you know, you don't think you're going to wake up and do it. But I was fortunate enough to be able to have that opportunity, and something that obviously I think now I'm starting to retire. It's, yeah, you're starting to take it all in now and actually appreciate it more for what it was.
And the question then I have to ask, have you received a call from Riley McGree recently? Because the writing is on the wall, right, that he might join Celtic. So any contact there, or what's your opinion about him potentially signing?
No, I've had a lot of contact. I've had a lot of contact from people back in Scotland, obviously asking me about Riley himself, reporters, and asking for quotes and whatever else. I think he's going to do fantastic. The reason I say that is obviously he's definitely an Ange type of player, that he can get box to box. We've seen him in the A-League. He's been successful. He can score goals. But what I really liked about Riley, when I played against him particularly, he had this sense of assurance of himself. You know, and I suppose people will say it's cocky or it's this or that. I had it as a sense of confidence and assurance about himself, that he believed in himself and he wouldn't step backwards. He'd always step forwards on you. And I think that's particularly what you need to be a Celtic footballer. You need to have that little bit of naughtiness about yourself, but a little bit of confidence, you know that. And he's got that. He's got that streak in him, and I really like that about him. I love players that have that edge to them, you know. And Riley's got that in abundance, and he wants to get in the box and he wants to score goals. And a club like Celtic, in particular at the moment, with Ange and the way he likes to perform and likes his team to play, you're going to get chances. So with David Turnbull, who's been successful under Ange as well, he's out for now probably another 2 months with his hamstring. So I think Riley's that type of player who's going to fit that fold for Celtic. And, you know, having the progression in the English Championship that he's had in the last 18 months, he's going to be an even better player than what we've seen. Went to the Olympics as well on the international stage. So for me, he's going to be an out-and-out Socceroo to play, you know, from every game in qualifiers or World Cup to, you know, to come. And I think it's great that if he can get a move to Celtic before this World Cup, hopefully we qualify, that we've got another player in that middle of the park that can be excellent for us.
Scott, just returning to, sorry, Bert, go ahead.
Yeah, and just the last question, because you just mentioned the Socceroos. So hopefully we will qualify. To be honest, when I saw the draw and where we are at the moment, potentially then facing, if we only finish third, a South American team, where do you see the chances for the Socceroos? A massive game now coming up against Vietnam in Melbourne.
Look, I think we have to qualify as top two. I think anything leaving it out to chance thereafter, and in the environments that we see in South America, you know, it's going to be very, very difficult and challenging, because we always know within the South American qualifiers, there's always that one that you just don't want to qualify against, or you have to play against. We've seen it twice when we played Uruguay. So, you know, there's always one team that are always struggling within that environment, and you could possibly see that happening again. So you'd rather not leave it to chance. Can it still be possible and viable? Yes, but they need to start performing better as well. And the pressure is on now. There's no question. You know, after the recent couple of games, I think the pressure's starting to be felt by the coaching staff and from the players. They've just got to, you know, take a breath and go again. And hopefully now that they've had this little breakaway from international football, they come back and we can start in a positive manner and get 3 points in the next game. And hopefully that sees us bridge that gap.
Fingers crossed.
George, final question.
Just a final question, please, Scott, on the soccer scene in Queensland and more specifically the Gold Coast. Is the Gold Coast ready for another team to enter the men's A-League, or does the ghost of Clive Palmer still linger? And do you think there is enough community and corporate support to sustain a team on the Gold Coast?
It's an excellent question. For the Gold Coast, I'm not sure demographically right now it would be successful. I think there is definitely in the future. Yes, I think the Gold Coast particularly is an ever-growing community. I think now a lot more in the last couple of years I've seen, and obviously due to COVID, there's a lot more people setting roots down within the Gold Coast itself, and it's just ever growing, as we see in a lot of Australia, mind you. But I think it will take some time to have that demographic where we can actually have enough fans to support that. But I'm definitely with, though, 100% that Queensland needs another team. I think we do see that in Sydney and Melbourne we have that rivalry, and I think, you know, Brisbane Roar would only benefit and would be healthy for the game up here. It's particularly for younger aspiring players that they had a second output of a place to go and aspire to play for. And I think then it would probably have an edge with Brisbane as well, and they would have to come to the fore a little bit more, and maybe the owners have to put a little bit more money in the coffers as well to make sure that they keep the second team away from them. And I think that for me is a must in the coming time. And I'm not saying it has to be Brisbane, but certainly I think someone else in Queensland, it's a big enough state to be able to sustain another team. Just it's all about location.
With Scott McDonald as the coach.
I don't know about that. One step at a time.
and maybe Gold Coast, your team, maybe they can apply for the license, Scott.
Oh, look, never say never. But I think, speaking to my owner in the football club, they just want to be the best NPL club in Australia. That's their aspirations right now. I think talks of second leagues and everything else. I think our club and our owner has been very sensible in those talks up till now and not really got involved in them. He just wants to focus on trying to build our club, from the bottom up and within our community to make it the best, one in Queensland and two in Australia. That's the aspirations for our football club going forward.
Well, it's a great club with a great history, so it's always onwards and upwards with a lot of the NPL clubs. So Scott McDonald, thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it, and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Stay safe, guys.
Thank you, Scott. All the best.
Yes,
Good on you.
Thanks, Scott. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Thanks. Take care.